Hello and welcome to our Ace and Arrow panel for this year's Galway Pride festival. We are here today to talk to you about all things asexual and aromantic and the variety of identities that exist in that spectrum. So my name is Cúán Keane, my pronouns are he, they, and I am the Vice-Chair for this year's Galway Pride. And I'm going to allow our guests now to introduce themselves, starting with Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna. I am biromantic asexual, which I will explain later. And my pronouns are she, her.
Excellent. And Alex?
Yeah, perfect. My name is Alex. My pronouns are they, them. And I use kind of both bi and grey asexual kind of as labels to describe myself, but we'll go into that in more detail later.
Excellent. And I am asexual and aromantic, which I will start with explaining what that means, and then we can get into some of the more nitty-gritty labels with Anna and Alex. So in broad terms, asexuality is experiencing very little or no sexual attraction or desire for partnered sex. And then aromanticism is the romantic orientation equivalent of that. So for me, that means I don't look at any hot person and go, I would bang them, even theoretically. And I don't meet any person where I'm like, yeah, we could do the dating thing and maybe the like other romance stuff. I'm just like, genuinely kind of forget it exists. Came across a great metaphor a couple of months ago at the University College Cork Queer Conf. And basically, if this was a game of The Sims, there would be nothing you could do to unlock the heart bar under the friendship bar. It's just friendship bars for me. So with that, we'll go to Alex this time if you want to kind of explain your labels of what they mean to you.
Yeah, cool. So I suppose I would have started using bi initially as kind of I do feel attraction to, I suppose, all genders, like people more generally speaking is how I would use that. Again, there's a whole thing of pansexual would also apply. I prefer to use bi just for personal reasons. And then a couple of years after that, I started using grey ace or asexual as well to describe sort of how I experience sexual attraction. So in terms of grey ace, it's that it's there, sort of, but it's not a constant. It's not something that is, best way I can put it, it is kind of like that if, you know, it is that gray area between black and white, or that idea of, yeah, there is some there. It happens very occasionally. In my own personal circumstances, it's just something that very, very rarely happens for me. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of why I started using ace to describe myself and to describe that aspect of my own queerness.
Excellent. Thank you. And Anna, if you want to explain your side of things.
Well, I started off identifying as bisexual because for me, there was no difference in my attraction to any gender. And then later on realized that attraction was in fact zero, which is an incredibly common pathway for ace people. You would not believe the number of times that people will say that's exactly the same situation they were in. So what I realized over time is that I don't have sexual attraction to anyone, but I'm a very romantic person. I identify as biromantic because I actually tend to fall for women more than men, but it has happened, you know, with a variety of people. So it helped me understand exactly what was happening, because in terms of like, if I was attracted to someone romantically, I'd want to be close to them. You know, I'd want to spend all my time with them. In the past, it's been like, you know, sharing a bed 5 nights a week, you know, this kind of thing. But platonically, you know, and I was happy with that. I wasn't like blind there going, oh, I can't wait till they make a move. I can't wait until this develops. You know, I was like, this is me set. I'm happy, you know, and I was like basically in a queer platonic relationship without realizing it. And the other person didn't realize it. So things went a little funny towards the end. But, you know, it really helped me finding just the right words to be able to communicate what I was experiencing, because I knew, like, you know, when that relationship broke down, I actually went to counseling for that because I was so devastated. I didn't really understand what had happened. And the counselor was convinced that I was just a closeted lesbian who was not admitting my feelings, you know.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
That was her interpretation. That was her kind of understanding of my situation. But I knew that wasn't the case because I had this word, asexual. You know, I was able to kind of protect my actual reality from her misinterpretation based on her not really understanding that asexual people exist. And that's happened a few times in therapy. I don't know.
It's a huge problem within the medical community. With DSM-5 so prior to DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is put out by the American Psychiatric Association, I believe.
That sounds right.
Yeah. And it's like, if you deal in the realm of mental illness at all, you've come across the DSM. It is a thing, the document that formerly had medicalized homosexuality, for instance. And up until DSM-5, asexuality was still considered a disorder, a mental disorder under the DSM. In the full version, there is now a little clause that says, it's not a disorder if it doesn't cause the patient any distress. And that was their like, see, now we've demedicalized you. But in the abridged version, that clause isn't there. And there's a lot of people that work with the abridged version. There's also like, we live in a society that favors cis heteronormativity. So it puts value on a cis man and a cis woman being the ideal relationship and fulfilling all their obligations under patriarchy and everything else. And the messaging that a lot of ace people and aro people receive is that you are fundamentally broken if you don't experience attraction and do relationships the way you're supposed to. And so if someone doesn't have the language already to know, like you did, Anna, how then are they supposed to not feel distressed? Like, society tries to program that distress into you. And so that's not really proper demedicalization of our just natural reality. It's still possible, even with the full DSM, for a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a therapist to discriminate against you on the basis of your orientation, which is shite.
And it is, for those people who aren't aware of asexuality, are the most vulnerable to this, because it's considered probably about 1% of the population. You know, so population of Ireland is 6 million now, is it roughly?
If you go for the whole island, you're talking about 7 million people.
Right. So like, okay, so 1% of that
is 70,000 people.
So 70,000 aces, you know, aromantic people are another 1%. You know, there's an overlap, but it's actually not a circle, you know. Then they don't know, like, why relationships aren't working for them, or why they find it so stressful, potentially, why they're not having the physical response that is considered normal. You know, I had just a couple of years ago, even after this, like, counselor was so adamant, you know, that she knew what my problem was and didn't actually understand it at all. I had a session with someone that I wasn't meant to be seeing her specifically. She was just assessing me for something. And her business card read psychosexual therapist. And I mentioned I was asexual during the interview, and she had to ask me what that meant. So every client she sees, every client that the people who've been through the same training as her sees, which is a grand amount of people, of people with relationship difficulties, sexual difficulties, and they are blaming psychological issues for this, you know. And she's sitting there as the person who can potentially steer them towards help and telling them how to deal with this and what their problem is. And she doesn't understand that 1% of the population is going to have this experience of just not being attracted, and they're fine. You know, if society would leave us alone, we'd be that. You know, it's just how we are. But it's like, it's institutional. The knowledge is not there because the research is not there. The research is not there because awareness wasn't there for a long time. But
it's a systemic issue, as are most things. Have you had any experiences like that, Alex, with healthcare professionals or other professionals?
Yeah, I think from my own experience within the medical profession, it's important to, I suppose, make the distinction between distress caused by your environment or the society that you're in, and what that does, and distress internally. So I am transgender, I'm bi, I am ace. I have been a lot of firsts for a lot of doctors, so I'm very used to that environment at this point. It just kind of happens at most of my medical appointments. I deal with it, I move on. It's, you know, it's what I do. So I think it is important to, within the medical industry, to profession, to talk about that difference between distress by your circumstances. So for example, actually I'll bring in, like, so I experienced both dysphoria as a trans person, and that's an internal distress. That is something that I know I feel very acutely as an internal thing. This is my own body and my own brain saying, well, no, this is not quite right. It's all right, but it's not quite right. And there are things that we can do to fix that, and to address that discomfort. And the external issue of transphobia, which, you know, isn't going away. It is going to cause distress, but it is an external force that's causing that distress rather than an internal response. So I suppose what I would love to see is for the medical profession to have a greater understanding of that. And it comes, again, it's a very intersectional idea in that it comes into a lot of areas. So if, for example, people with some disabled people, I myself am disabled, where you don't necessarily want a fix or a cure for whatever is happening, but you are still experiencing distress due to the society around you having certain expectations. And differentiating between those two types of distress. And because I suppose because where that distress is coming from is going to dictate what kind of treatment or approach or method of coping is going to be best suited for that person. And the wrong one can have very negative effects, as you've both mentioned. Like the wrong response from a counsellor, a therapist, even your own GP, can push you further away from the liberation that comes with identifying with a community. Because regardless of where you fall on the ace, aro, or allosexual and aromantic, which are the inverse, wherever you fall on that spectrum, we're still social creatures. And the vast majority of us need some kind of connection to community, and it's really healthy for us to have connection to community. Something else I was just thinking of there is, when you mention intersectionality, is the benefits that other groups get with destroying the amatonormativity, which is the normalization that everyone experiences and has to experience romantic love, that's some kind of ideal state to be in. And also the I cannot think of the word right now that fits, but the normalization that everyone experiences sexual attraction and desires sex in some way. When you begin to work on the liberation of ace and aro people from that system of oppression, it has benefits for other groups as well, in a variety of ways. Which have all just left my brain right now. So if either of you have thoughts on that, feel free to jump in. It's certainly, I would say it allows for healthier relationships, something that I've found in all of my relationships as an ace person is that I have better communication because I kind of had to learn how to more effectively communicate. That's working. That's not right now. Do this instead, or, you know, very clearly kind of setting out, this is a part of my life and it's a part of me. And it's something, because I'm Grace as well, it's something that changes over time, and communicating that effectively, which has a knock-on effect in making that communication throughout the whole of the relationship better and just easier. Yeah. So when we by taking that necessary, I suppose, sexualization of out of a lot of social interactions, you can, I guess, benefit from increased communication, I suppose, and from clearer communication that isn't relying on subtext or social cues.
Yeah. One of the things I was thinking of there is that, like, there are a lot of people who maybe they want a romantic partner, but they don't want that to be the biggest partnership or relationship in their life. And these can be cis straight people, and they just don't particularly have a desire to make that the most important thing in their life. They also suffer under the idea that, like, romantic love should look a certain way, should be the most important relationship in your life. It's really damaging, actually, to people to say you will find one person and you will rely on each other for the vast majority of your emotional needs. That's a terrible burden to put on one person. And, like, this expectation that by a certain age you should be married, you should be having kids, you should have a house. Like, there are so many problems with that. Like, the idea that you should have a house is classist. The idea that there's a certain age that you should be married by has elements of misogyny and other types of oppression in them. But, like, it really sucks. Like, how many people end up in terrible, bitter marriages because they just settle down with the first person that they found, you know, reasonably bearable, they thought. And now I'm having all sorts of thoughts about purity culture and how a lot of people get pressured into marrying the first person that they feel any kind of attraction towards, because you're never going to get any kind of sexual or romantic interaction if you don't marry them. And then how many ace people get trapped in those kinds of marriages, and arrow people get trapped in those kinds of marriages because of pressure from society. This is obviously, like, it's a big topic. We could spend a couple of hours just talking about that and its intersection with ace oppression alone. But I suppose we'll move on because otherwise we could be here all day. Are either of you out in all of your social circles about your aspec identity?
I feel like I am casually out, as in I've definitely mentioned it around, like, my family. You know, I've mentioned it online quite freely. People don't really, I suppose, turn around and question you then, though. You know, if it just doesn't seem to come up that much, and in a way that's a little hurtful, because, like, you know, when when someone's in your life and you're like a friend of theirs or whatever, and they have something kind of, you know, that makes their life a little bit more complicated, maybe it would be nice if people asked, how do you deal with it? How do you feel about it? You know, just have that curiosity about the people in your life, kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I find it with, you know, the thought's gone out of my head. Yeah, I suppose I am technically out, but, like, I've never really made a big deal out of it. So.
Yeah. What about yourself, Alex?
Yeah, I think in a similar vein, I'm out casually. It's not something that I suppose I've gotten a lot of questions about. Usually when questions come, they come in the form of, okay, you're trans, what the hell are your pronouns? And what does that mean? So I feel like it tends to be much in the way that I'm also bi, and I'm also out as, you know, bi. it tends to get people tend to get distracted by what they see as like the big thing, or the thing that they're the most not familiar with, and get sidetracked to that. So similarly, I think pretty much everybody in my life knows. I don't know if it's, I suppose, registered with a lot of people. It's also a case of I am in a long-term relationship, so I'm very aware that a lot of people will just kind of assume based on that what that involves and how that relationship works. So there's, I suppose, a layer of assumptions there, just on how I look to the world. Yeah.
In my own case, I am out technically to the entire country, or I suppose I should say anyone who read a particular article in a particular newspaper in a particular year. Because if people aren't aware, the Irish hotelier Francis Brennan is asexual. And when he came out in 2015, one of the newspapers got their freelance journalists to track down some Irish aspec people and interview them. I was out to my sister when I did that interview. And then I just shared the link to the interview on my Facebook profile. So it's an interesting way to come out. I am in favor of getting it all done at once if you can. Going to a national newspaper is perhaps a little dramatic, and it did result in some very interesting interactions, like my landlady correcting the rent and being like, "Oh, I saw you in the paper." I was like, "You did now, did you?" She's like, "Yes." Okay, now bye. Like, okay. Or my one of my work colleagues being like, "Oh, I saw your thing in the paper. That was like really cool." Geez, the people in the comments are very mean though. It was so funny to me because I went to look at the comments, and at that point I'd gotten so used to like the shite that people say about ace and arrow people online that I was like, "Oh, you made the amoeba comment? That's so basic. Like, would you not step up?" Like that's
the beyond that, actually.
Could you just not make like a more interesting comment? Like, if you're going to do hate speech, at least be interesting about it.
Yeah, give me something original to work with, you know?
Yeah. Oh, so the gays have their rights, and now this crowd are showing up looking for attention. Like, that's also very, like, that's tame. Honestly, that's tame. Like,
one of the worst anti-ace shit I've ever experienced in my life was actually on a mental health kind of forum where people could comment on antidepressants they were taking. And there was one particular one, and it had a massive effect on people's libido, which is common with these things. And literally people were like, "What's the point of living? I can't, have sex anymore. What monster could live like this?" Like the actual dehumanization. And these are genuinely like, it was kind of like, saying the quiet stuff out loud.
Yeah. It's one of those weird things where like, I sympathize with you if you feel like that's like a fundamental aspect of how you live your life. It can be difficult to cope with that changing, but also like, stall the ball there, buddy. That's a little bit like... Okay, it very much reminds me of like, and Alex, you may have experienced this as well. Do you ever get the people who notice you're disabled and they're like, "God, I'd kill myself if I was."
Oh yeah,
and you're like, "Who says
why
that?
Would you say that to another human being?" Yeah, it's very.
You're so brave.
Yeah,
I think you got an option. You went to the shop and you took the brave option. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. It's a very, I suppose, odd interaction where I'm like, you really took the like your own personal feelings on this element and just really expanded that out to like everyone, which is impressive. I'm impressed that that's immediately where you went, but also it's okay. It's actually fine. I'm fine with this.
Yeah, it is. Like, people will say the wilder shit to you though. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose it really does come down to that like concept of there's a default human. You know, I mean, like, let's be real, it is white body supremacy. Like that is the core of all of this. Is there is a default human that everyone else is a weird deviation from, and they have to be like kind of treated with caution until they prove their humanity enough to be accepted.
Yeah, because like
acknowledging that the idea that we are given in our brains of what a human is, and you know, everything is like literally play school level. You know, it's a Fisher Price concept of humanity. You know.
And like once you, because there's a whole bunch of things, we mentioned the 1% stat, there's a whole bunch of like natural deviations, if we want to call them that, or natural variations if we want to be kinder. But like the system views them as deviant. But like once you start breaking it down, like white isn't the most common skin color in the whole world. So like you remove those. You remove all those little like 1% bits that they don't care. Like you're actually talking about a very like the ideal average human under white body supremacy. There's very fucking few of them.
The default human, everybody fails in some way or another. Everybody fails to live up with that. And everybody's trying to like project this illusion by appearing as normal as possible. You know, and it's completely like, you know, so incredibly bad for literally everyone's mental health to have kind of pressure. If I grow up to be a certain way, that you know is that deviation, that I won't be safe. I won't be in the herd. I won't be, you know, given that fairy tale ending of, you know, living happily ever after. You know, it is all a myth. When people encounter you and you're living outside that myth and you're quite happy, they don't know what to do with that because they've been told that like you go off the path, you get lost in the woods. I don't know where I'm going with this metaphor, but you know, you go off the path, you get lost in the woods, you get eaten by wolves, you know, and then you're there like living in a treehouse going, this is great, actually, squirrels bring me food. You know.
And it is a thing where like if you do fall into that like deviant category, you're either seen as the pitiful deviant who will get eaten by the wolves, or you're seen as the monstrous deviant and you are the wolf.
There is there is absolutely liberation, I suppose, in moving away from that default mindset. That it's also difficult to do. It's something that we're not used to doing.
It's constant because it's for every single axis of identity. You actually have to stop and reevaluate because it's not like you can be like, oh, well, I'm default in 5 ways and then one is the other. That one thing that like, you know, kind of deviates, like being asexual or, you know, being queer in general, will have an impact on how you were also like perceived as, you know, like a cis person or, you know, a kind of, name other categories of default people.
But like the inverse is also true where like, as white people and as like white settled Irish people, we also have huge privilege to defend ourselves against the system if it tries to punish us for our deviations that other people don't have access to.
Exactly. And you have to constantly keep that in mind as you learn about ways that you are actually privileged and you never really thought about it. Like ace versus allo. A lot of people like will kind of do a lot of work in figuring out their orientation, but they don't realize that having an orientation that's pointed towards other people is itself an axis, you know? And it's like it kind of, you have to take that step back constantly and reevaluate how you fit into the world if other people are existing in that way.
And like you see it like in assimilationist narratives, the thing is like, oh, we're just like you, right? Like we're just like you, we just happen to fancy people who are more like us instead of being different from us. It's that appeal to the norm and the like, please like expand your definition of like because protected. It does.
There's enough similarity there that will give like
but
a little bit of insight, that maybe they'll start changing their mind and start feeling, more secure in that idea. But then it's something that they just don't get at all. Unless you're used to stepping back and evaluating like that, it can be very challenging for people. They kind of have this weird defensive, like, don't make me think about this. I've done that work. And it's like, actually, there's always more to do. So, Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to add in there, Alex?
No, I suppose it is just that idea of moving away from that narrative entirely, rather than looking to assimilation or to expanding the norm, but rather than breaking the idea of the norm in the first place.
Yeah. Liberation instead of assimilation.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, assimilation will only get you so far.
Because it requires you to simplify things that are as complex as they come. So we've talked a lot about like fundamentals and theory and stuff, but what are some of the like practical things that the wider LGBT plus community can do to be better allies to aspec people?
Suppose it's kind of like a personal, thing, but I would like to see less events throughout the year, because Pride is great for having events that are outside of bars and alcohol-related spaces, but to have kind of, regular enough kind of social events, it's just something that would be nice, and I suppose it feels a little less pressurized than some spaces where there is kind of almost an impression that people are, maybe looking for, sorry, my brain just shut off there for a second, but of that space that is widely seen as very sexualized in nature. And it's not, don't do these events, but it would also be nice to have the option of other events. Also, This is just me complaining about the fact that every bar in Galway has a step into it.
Yes. Except Monroe's, which doesn't, but it doesn't have accessible bathrooms. So that's fun. You can get your wheelchair in the door, but heaven forbid you need to take a piss. But yeah, definitely, like there is this myth that aspec people want to like neuter pride and neuter queer spaces and like take sex away from people, and we're basically like Puritans coming in to like squash all our sexual liberation. And I'm like, no, we're used as pawns by right-wing plants who want to force that narrative. It came up during the like kink at Pride stuff, and I'm like, you don't realize how many ace and arrow people are heavily involved in the kink community. Like, we are not the ones asking for this. People are making assumptions. And I saw people defend against that by being like, oh no, we can do what we want, because sure, aspec people don't want to go to Pride anyway. I'm like, that's also not true. It's like, we just want variety.
Yeah.
Just more events in different variations at different locations to allow everyone who wants, because like, there are other people within the queer community who, for whatever reason, are not interested in the bar scene.
Yeah.
Like, there variation, more stuff.
Yeah.
Have you any suggestions, Anna?
Yeah, I suppose my main one would be if people could understand the difference between like asexuality and aromanticism as orientations, as in it's you in relation to other people, and the difference between that and desexualization, which is done to you from the outside. There there was a wee bit of discourse there a few years ago about how asexuality was wrong because it desexualized people. It's people desexualizing themselves, and that Yeah. And that because there are like so many people who would be like autistic or disabled, also like people of color as well, like especially Black people, are simultaneously hypersexualized and desexualized, as in they are doing agency over what they themselves want. And then also they are hypersexualized, so everything they do is interpreted to be sexual, or suggested, or, in some way. And it's dehumanization. It is so horrible because it's ignoring the person inside of that experience, and what they think and what they want. And like it's easy, I think, to look at asexuality from the outside and say, well, it kind of ish sounds like this bad thing sometimes, so it's bad. Yeah. There's this transitive property, and it's actually, no, you have to actually listen to the people experiencing this, how they relate to these things. Find aces of color, find people who are, talking about their life with an asexual body, with an aromantic body. Like these are not thoughts. These are not ideas that have been taken on board and are being run with. They are like somatic experiences. Your body just doesn't do the thing. There's that absence of my body doesn't ever do the thing, or very rarely does the thing that everybody else is telling me is required to live that normal life.
I think it's people aren't aware of just the spectrum within asexuality and aromanticism as identities and labels themselves. There are ace people who do not ever want to have sex with another human being. There are people who are fine with having sex pretty regularly. And both of those people can be ace, and both of those people, it's a way of describing your relationship to the world and your relationship to other people. And it's important to know that there are many different ways to be asexual, the same way there are many different ways to be literally anyone or anything, and understanding that distinction and that differentiation of different experiences and letting people explain that on their own terms, I think is something important to consider and to move forward with.
Yeah, and I think there's often a conflation from outside the community that somebody who is sex repulsed must be sex negative. Those are not the same thing. Sex repulsed is, I personally am disgusted by the idea of my body being involved in sex. Being sex negative is, I am disgusted at the idea of anyone having sex, either in general or in ways that I disapprove of, and I am seeking to use systemic means to stop it from happening in ways I don't like. Sex repulsed people can be sex positive. In fact, most sex repulsed people are sex positive. They just don't want their own body involved in it. They are happy for everyone else to go off and do what they want to do, where they want to do it.
Yeah, it's pineapple on pizza. Like if you're into that and you're like, yeah, that's tasty, I enjoy that, go for it. I actually quite enjoy it myself. Wouldn't be my first choice though. There's pepperonis in the world. I mean, let's be serious. But I suppose, like, as well, actual attraction itself, like it's funny how like much time I've spent reading about attraction, given that something I don't experience, but I do find that's often the way. If you want to understand, what cis privilege is, ask a trans person, because they're going to be like in that headspace of, what is that? Well, why is that person able to do that? There's value sometimes in looking to that outside perspective.
It is really funny. Like the ace community and the aro community would constantly ask, like, well, what is attraction? What do you mean you don't experience attraction? Define attraction. I'm like, that is like asking me to describe a color I have never seen. The best description I've got for what sexual attraction is directed libido. That's pretty much about like the closest thing I've got that like gets to the idea and isn't overly technical. So there you go. I don't experience directed libido. Does that help?
I think
what the fuck romantic attraction is, no idea.
It's really difficult to define something by the lack of it. And it's something that I come across a lot with when talking to other ace people is it takes ages to figure out that you're ace because it's really difficult to tell that you're not experiencing something.
Oh, I had myself convinced that I was just being, now this is like, if you haven't already picked up, I'm trans, okay? So there was a time before I knew I was ace and before I knew I was trans where I thought I was a straight girl. You may now all laugh at how ridiculous a notion that is, because I do frequently. But there was a time when I was a good Christian straight girl who was convinced I was just really good at the not being tempted by sin thing.
Yeah.
Wow, this really isn't a problem for me. Like everybody talks about how much of a problem it is, and it isn't a problem for me. That's definitely something that we don't need to look at right now.
Yeah, no, God has just blessed me with this particular talent. This is the bit that I'm really good at. Like some people are really good at worship music. I'm just really good at not looking at people's bodies and being tempted by them. But now that we've all had a good giggle about the idea that I ever thought I was a straight girl, oh, poor young me who really didn't know any better. Speaking of like trying to figure out if you're ace or if you're aro, is there any advice that you would give somebody who's currently questioning that aspect of their identity?
Like if I ask the question, okay, like if you're maybe you're this works more for like people who are romantic as well as ace, but like if I said, okay, that person you have a crush on, imagine in 50 years you're married, but you never ever have sex with them. Would you be like, I'd still do it? Would you be like, oh, I'd be up for that. I'd be fine with that, because that kind of like, but even that confusion over like, why would that be a problem? If they were my favorite person in the world and I was married to them and we had this happy life together, but we just never had sex, why would I be mad at that?
That's not bad. Like,
that might be a clue, okay? That just might be a clue.
Yeah. I guess as well, something that I kind of wish I'd known when I was figuring out my own identities is it's okay if you don't know, and it's okay if you change it later. I suppose my own relationship to identities and labels and the words that I use to describe myself is just that they're just descriptions. They can change. And if I get it wrong, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that it's comfortable. If it feels like it fits, then chances are it fits. Like it's okay to just try something on for a while, see if it takes, see if that's something that works. Ask questions like that. Is this something that really matters to me? Do I really want a romantic relationship, or do I just want do I want a different type of relationship? What do I want from this? And it's okay not to have those answers either. It probably took me a couple of years to figure out like the actual gray ace part of my own identity, where I was just kind of trying things and asking those questions, and you don't always have the answers right away. And it's okay for it to take time. Genuinely, I've never really come across people who are very much firmly, you have to kind of have all this figured out. Everybody's only ever really figuring out bits and pieces as we go. Yeah. Whatever order that comes in is completely fine. Yeah. Like I found the most helpful thing for me was giving myself permission to be wrong, was kind of going, okay, this is what we're working with for now. Particularly like given that so far my identity has been like ace, arrow, there's no gray area in there, except for some stuff that I might touch on later if it comes up. Like just, I gave myself permission to be wrong, because if, for instance, I do end up being grey ace or grey romantic, and it happens very, very rarely, I won't know that it's happening very, very rarely until it happens.
if I'm demi, which means that you only experience that particular type of attraction after forming a strong emotional bond, which takes months or years, that is not how attraction works for everyone. Stop trying to like dismiss demi identities as being like, oh, well, that's just normal. It's like, no. This is genuinely, people are ace and or aro until years later when they're like, oh, that's a light bulb moment. Like, that's what we're talking about. Until then, most people experience it as just being ace and or aro. But side tangent. You don't know that those things can happen until they do happen. So if you identify as ace now and then you experience attraction later, that's fine. It's not that you were wrong. It's that based on the data you had, you made the best prediction you could.
Yeah.
Along with being descriptions, labels are tools. So if it fits you and it gives you access to support or community or just internal comfort, then fucking go for it. If you're afraid, that's fine. If you're like, oh, but I've never had sex or I've never gone on a date, so how can I know until I try it? You don't have to try it. If you don't feel any like great burning internal desire to do it, like leaving aside what your mother says about wanting grandchildren and what your siblings say about why you never go on dates or anything like that. If internally you are fine with being a virgin and being a frigid for the rest of your life, that's okay. You don't have to go try it and have a terrible experience to solidify that actually you don't want it. You can just not want it. And if you are specifically Galway based, but honestly, the rest of the country is welcome too, because we're doing it online, and you're looking for access to community and support, on the first Friday of every month, there is an Ace and Arrow social space facilitated by myself and Alex through a mock. Get in touch with a mock or Choxolis on social media. They will help you gain access to that space. Sometimes we just chill and chat shit. Sometimes we talk really like in depth about specific topics to the community and everything in between. You are welcome in that space, even if you are just questioning. And if you're not ready, the space will be there when you are. So that is our advice. And there are online spots that you can check out as well. Asexuality.org has the forums that belong to the Asexual Visibility and Education Network. So that's like, if you find that, you will find most other things that are potentially available. If there's any other like supports or knowledge bases that you two would like to recommend, do go ahead.
I don't think so. I think I used Avon as well, like when I was figuring stuff out.
Yeah, just on Twitter, because Twitter is pretty fun sometimes. You know, I don't really post anything on Twitter, so but it's fun to watch. Yasmin Benoit, I'm not entirely sure, but she's in the UK and she's an ace activist and she is amazing. Her handle at the Yasmin Benoit. We can put it in the description, I guess. If you send that on to me, we'll make sure that it goes in where it belongs. It really is like kind of learning in little doses. I find a lot of the time is the best way to kind of, if it's your feelings, like your body is feeling, is experiencing the world as ace or arrow, and then your brain is catching up finally with the right words. There can be a lot of grief sometimes, a lot of anger maybe about past incidences. A lot of kind of what I found was kind of self-betrayal. Like, I couldn't believe I put myself in those situations when I was actually that uncomfortable. Then when I realized it was okay to be that uncomfortable. Sometimes like just maybe not like diving in and reading loads of essays that are kind of technical or something, but just like being around other people who are living their best ace life and being okay and talking about things. It's okay to kind of learn softly like that as well. Because these can be very tough realizations sometimes.
Actually, if you are interested in getting more technical, now I know the book is several years old at this point because it came out as I was figuring stuff out back in 2014. So yeah, it's out about 7 years now, but it's The Invisible Orientation by Julia Sandra Decker, which is, it's got a lot of stuff in there. There's stuff in there that is by this stage outdated that I probably didn't realize at the time. There's other stuff in there that I would disagree with based on my own experiences. There is a problem, or there was, I should say, a problem in the ace community where the ace community would claim, oh, we don't, like, we have all the same, like, demographic makeup as the rest of society. So, like, we don't have the one that really stands out is we don't have any more autistic people than the allo community does. But the autistic community is like, no, there's way more people in the autistic community that are ace and aro than in the allistic community. And that doesn't add up for me. There's no way that the autistic community are noticing a huge discrepancy and the ace community doesn't have that same difference. So certainly when I was active in online forums, there was a lot of subtle ableism and exclusion there. And that is present in that book. So that is one heads up I will give you. But there is still a lot of like valuable information in it as well. I suppose we'll end, because we're coming up, I think, on the end of our hour with the fun question, although it can be very difficult to answer for these minority identities. What is your favorite representation in media of ace and aro identities, or some of your favorites if you can't pick one? And if you can't think of any, what would you like to see?
Okay, this is it's a bit off the beaten track, okay? For like queer platonic relationship, Troy and Abed from Community, like that kind of level of intimacy and like companionship. Like they're a unit, they really are. Like it's I mean, you know, like it's not perfect, is it? You know, like for kind of or also what's his name, JD from Scrubs and Turk, like they actually probably are a better one, because they're like they date other people, and they're like, you know, Turk gets married to Carla, and like JD being so close is brought up constantly, and it's like, you know, do you love him more than me, almost? You know, but they go with it, they work with it, you know, they roll with it because that's how they are. And it's like the narrative of, oh no, your romantic relationship should be the most, you know, sacred one or whatever. It just doesn't have to be like that. Now, I mean, they weren't written for that, but accidentally they kind of did something.
A lot of the time, so when we're dealing with these like more marginalized or more invisible identities, that's what we have to go for. And like sometimes they're better than the intentional ones, because people aren't adding in stereotypes because they don't realize what they're writing in the first place.
Like,
but
like ace people walk among us. So writers writing about that person they knew that never dated or whatever are going to unconsciously actually draw on an actual ace person that just didn't know it, and they didn't know it, and then it's going to show up. So you can actually find us everywhere, but we're just hidden under a layer of bullshit that makes it difficult to identify.
And Alex?
I'm trying to think of, I suppose, like that, like you were talking about those like accidental ones. I read a lot of the Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes as a kid, which I really enjoyed, which in hindsight, of course I did. It was, you know, like it's very much that kind of, I suppose, a decentralization of romantic relationships, which I just liked in the text. And then more explicit representation, I watch a lot of tabletop role-playing games that are actual play done online. So I've watched some Dimension 20 stuff. I've watched Critical Role, things like that, and there are a couple of characters there that I'm very fond of. So I suppose recently that would be from Critical Role, there was Caduceus Clay, one of the more recent characters, was explicitly ace and aro, and confirmed, again, the creator kind of confirmed it out of text since it didn't make sense to confirm in text, but was very textual in how it was played and was very central to that narrative, which was just a nice moment for me of there being an actual ace character in something that I already liked.
And I know, because I'm also fond of Critical Role, that was intentional. Like, he created, because sometimes with those improv type things, you end up with accidental queer rep, where like in the course of improv, somebody's like, oh, I just realized something.
I accidentally wrote this. Yep.
Yeah. But Thomas Jaffe is the name of the actor who played this character. He was very intentional in doing it. Now, he didn't know when he was doing it that like there's also aromanticism, but he was playing this as an ace-hour character, and it took almost 100 episodes for it to, like, people who knew, because there's that whole thing of coding. So like the ace community and people who were more aware almost straight away were like,
that's ace.
One of us.
I know that. I know that.
There was a moment where like an NPC run by the dungeon master tried to flirt with him, and it completely went over his head. And the other characters were like, she was hitting on you. Do you want us to go back and like fix you up with her? He was like, oh no, that's not my thing. And like, really? Like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. Like, I love what all of you have going on. It's very fun to watch, but it is not for me. And afterwards on Twitter, people were like, so like, definitely ace. And he was like, yeah. And somebody came along and was like, oh, is he aromantic? And Taliesin is an older queer guy. He's in his 40s. He was like, one moment, Google. Yes. Like, now that I know what that word means, yes, that also applies.
Excuse me for a moment. I need to go Google something. I will be back.
But yeah, that was wonderful. And because I've discussed Caduceus at length, because everyone who watches Critical Role who is ace or arospec was like, oh, he's our son. We love him. So there's been a lot of conversations. But one of the things I really love, because there's this stereotype of aspec people that we're cold, robotic, emotionless, that we don't feel other kinds of love. And like, I want to state that like, if anyone is like low empathy or no empathy, who has alexithymia or any other condition that impacts their emotions or any of that other stuff going on, you are just as human as the rest of us and just as deserving of care and respect. Mm-hmm. There is an unfortunate stereotype that every ace and arrow person is robotic and cold and emotionless and experiences no type of love. And that is also wrong. And I love that Caduceus exists as a counter to that, because he is full of love. He loves his friends deeply, and that shows through in everything he does. And it was just really nice to have, like, he has this big speech at one moment about, you know, experiencing community love and stuff. And it's really nice that came from the aspec character, and that he was never, not that he's human, because fantasy novels or fantasy settings, so lots of different races that are humanoid but not necessarily human. He's kind of a cow-shaped man, but he's never dehumanized. He's never stripped of his personhood for his identity by the story, which is just also great to see. And I am going to plug, like, it's great to see stuff show up in traditional media. It's a lot harder for it to end up there. So if you are looking for representation of minority identities, find independent artists, whether they are writers, actors, role players, that have more creative control directly over the media they're creating, who share your identities, because you will find yourself in their work then. Because there are fewer people to tell them, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with that, like, nice note of, you can actually find stories about you or about us, if you're not one of us, out there, if you put in the work. And it shouldn't take work, but unfortunately it does. Put in the work and you'll find them. I think with that we will wrap up this panel. I can't believe an hour has gone by already. Yeah, just like that. This is one of those, like, we could keep going for hours and hours yet. But I will say, on Tuesday or Friday when this is airing, and this is totally when we're recording it. But the next event up will be Galway Pride, I believe, which is going to be a space for queer Galway Irish speakers to gather together and do queer Irish shit. We also have a panel on queerness among ethnic minorities coming up later today, and a safe space for ethnic minorities that will be closed and facilitated for you folks. So that's coming up later today. You can, of course, check out any of the Pride social media, the Pride guide, any of our other stuff. We'll have our calendar up for the week, and we hope to see you at some of our events. And yeah, that's, I think, everything. If you want to, I don't know if either of you have anything you want to plug or recommend or anything like that, I'll give you the opportunity, and then we'll say so long.
No, I don't think so. Just thanks for having us, and thanks for letting us, rant for an hour.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll say slán go fóill.